Okay, shows sealing of the cylinder, what's going on, how's it happening. We do a dry test. The wet test on the compression test will determine whether we have a good ring seal or not. And when you squirt oil in there, oil is a seal. And a couple of lines down here, we'll get to that. Oil forms a seal between the rings and the cylinder wall. You do a compression test and you put oil in it, and you do the dry test and you put oil in it and do the wet test. Compression goes up about 15-20%. You have a ring problem. The rings aren't sealing against the cylinder wall. That's why we do a wet test. Okay, leak down test. You have relatively low compression. We do a leak down test to determine the point or the loss of seal in the combustion chamber. Where is it leaking from? First one there, you hear air at the tailpipe. TP is the tailpipe. That says we have an exhaust valve issue. Okay. And this one says, next one under that is air at the TV, which is throttle body. You hear air leaking in the throttle body, we have an intake valve problem. The intake valve is not closing, it's not seating properly, it's not holding compression, and the air is passing by and coming back up through the intake manifold. The next one there at the PCV valve or at the dipstick tube, that says we have a ring problem. Okay? Compression is blowing past the rings down into the oil pan or into the crankcase area. And it's leaking out that way, so it's going to leak. You can, like I say, you can pull the dipstick out, you can feel it and hear it, or you can pull the PCV valve hose off. You can feel it and hear it. So those are your problems you can pinpoint that way. Take the radiator cap off, and you're seeing air bubbles in the radiator. That says you have a blown head gasket or possibly a cracked block or a cracked cylinder head. The air is leaking into the cooling system. Okay. So don't always assume that it's a head gasket. Go for the big stuff. It's a crack. Yes?
One question. Last night the head gasket on one side of the radiator, like where the cap is, it stayed full. But the other side was like always empty.
That's what created your problem. The radiator was an issue in the car that created the problem for it to blow the head gasket. You didn't have good circulation through the radiator. Remember, the coolant has to constantly circulate. If it doesn't circulate, like I said, remember on most engines, the two center cylinders create a hot spot. That is the hottest point on that engine. Okay? Because normally that's where the head gasket will blow, is on the two center cylinders. But if you create that hot spot, that's what's going to happen. So coolant doesn't circulate, it can't cool it down. So it gets hotter, hotter, hotter. Hopefully the gasket fails before the block or the head fails. That's part of the reason it's there. That's a fuse. It's a safety thing. So it heats up, burns the gasket, shuts it down. But yeah, it sounds like your radiator was not working at all, or who's ever radiator.
No,
Damn.
So when I first got my Mustang, I heard police work.
So again, air in the cooling system, or showing in the radiator or in the overflow tank, that says we have a head gasket issue or a crack. Okay. But again, go for the big stuff, say it's a crack. If it's cracked and you take it apart, if you say it's cracked and you take it apart and it's just a head gasket, you just save them $2,000. It look like a hero.
So if you don't, you know how I feel, like stuff radiator, change radiator hose or something like that, or like the elbows, you know what I'm talking about, the connector to the block.
Or bypass hose.
Yeah, if you don't actually do that, if you don't get the air out, make sure the air out,
You're gonna overheat it.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. Again, a lot of today's cars, just by design, you'll notice that the engine may be a little bit higher than the radiator. It's going to trap air. There's a couple of different tools out there for you to get the air out of the system.
Yeah, I know you could twist the top of the thermostat.
Well, some of them have a bleeder valve on top of the stack, yeah. A lot of cases, a lot of guys will fill them up backwards. We won't fill them through the radiator or the coolant tank. We'll take a hose off the back of the engine and fill it through that hose. That way, you come in, you push the air out. Right. Okay. So you've got to look at it. There's a couple of tools out there. One of them is called an air lift. You actually hook shop air to it, and it creates a vacuum. So it will draw the coolant through the engine. There's a couple of, it's a company called Vacula. They have a pump system that you can put on it where it'll draw the coolant into the engine to fill up all the spaces. Air in the engine will not cool it. Okay, the air will actually, the thermostat won't work in air. It has to be in coolant. Your coolant temp sensor will not work in air. A lot of times when you have an engine and it's in air, coolant temp sensor, as soon as you turn the key on, the fan will come on because it's created a ground, because the sensor is in air. The sensor has no, it senses coolant. It does not sense air. Okay? So it has to be in coolant for it to work properly. It will not give you the correct temperature. Same thing with the thermostat. It will not open like it's supposed to in air. Now, a lot of times when it's in air, it'll open and it'll close back up and it'll stay closed. Okay, so again, coolant, the cooling system, especially in today's cars, is very, very important. No leaks, has to be sealed, and you must run the correct coolant in it. We'll probably, there's a whole section on that. We'll get back to it. Okay, good compression test, good leak down test, poor power balance test. Okay, you have to go in the other directions. We've got to look for something else there. Camshaft. The lobes on the camshaft. One of the lobes can wear down. Okay, that way it's not actuating the valve properly. The fuel injector itself is not spraying fuel. Remember, an injector has to spray fuel. It has to atomize the fuel and spray it. If it's dribbling out or if it's putting out wet fuel, that will not burn. Okay? It cannot put out liquid. It cannot put out liquid fuel. If it's putting out in a liquid, it will not burn. There's a stupid video out there too. A guy with a gas can, construction job. So he's got all this construction debris. So he takes a 5-gallon gas can, climbs up on top of it, and dumps the gas on it, and then climbs down. And then he strikes a match and lights a box. And before he can throw it on there, it explodes. Okay.
A whole bunch of
Right. Same thing. Remember, the liquid gas, it will burn, but the fumes are what ignites it. Okay. So you've got to be careful of the fumes. Atomized fuel is what burns because it's very tiny droplets. It's airborne. That's what burns. The liquid itself doesn't burn. It comes in, it goes back out as raw gasoline. Okay. So again, so you got a poor power balance, you have to check your ignition system, spark plug, the wire, the coil itself, the source of current to the coil, okay? The fuel injector, the lifter or the camshaft. Okay, we got to go back there. Something's causing that cylinder not to work. Okay, so back up and check everything else. Noises. Most of the noises change when you accelerate the engine. Okay, they go up and down with the engine. It's the tone of the noise that determines where it is or what it is. Most of your light noises are going to be in the valve train. It's going to be a rocker arm, a valve spring, a follower, or even a lash cup. You're going to hear them. They're going to sound near the top of the engine where the valve cover is. Okay, so they're going to be light clicking type noises there. Now, piston pin will probably stay the same. It's almost consistent. Okay? But it is going to be a knocking type noise. It's not going to have a deep tone to it. It's going to be in the medium tonal range, what it is. Very sharp metallic, light clicking valve train. Main bearings and rod bearings are going to have a deep tone to them. The rod will actually change with engine RPM. The main will not change. It won't. It'll stay there. It stays consistent even up through the RPM range. But it's going to be a deep thumping noise at the bottom, and it's going to sound like it's coming from the bottom of the engine. Okay. Piston slap, ring noise. The ring noise is going to be a higher pitched, sort of like the a valve tappet, but it's going to be a rapid, and it's going to change with engine speed, real high. And piston slap, again, that will actually go away once it warms up. So that'll change. It'll start when it's cold, you'll hear it.
Would you have to replace the piston with that?
Right. Well, you're going to have to measure it to see. Because if the cylinders are around, you may have to overbore it and put a new piston in, which would call for doing all of them, depending on the engine itself. But yeah, we want to minimize that. Okay, and oil pressure testing we haven't done yet, but there are some things that you need to know. Oil pressure testing, again, oil pressure changes as the engine warms up. Okay, when you first start it up cold, it'll be hot. As it warms, it'll actually come down. Remember, you need a minimum of 10 psi oil pressure for it to work. Okay, anything below 10 is bad oil pressure. Okay, but temperature is critical. Viscosity. When we talk about viscosity, viscosity is the ability of the oil to flow. Okay? That's what makes it move. And in a lot of cases, it's temperature sensitive. This is a whole other section too. But when you look at your oil, and we see 5W30,
He's smoking. Don't worry about it. Fuck you.
okay, the 5W means that oil at minus 32, that oil flows as a 5-way oil. The W in there is for winter. So that's the winter, it's a multi-weight oil. W is for the winter flow. It's normally a 30-weight oil. So at minus 32, it will flow. It'll flow at flow as a 5-way oil. Okay. But the clearances, the minimum clearances that we set up in the engine when we assemble it is what establishes that minimum oil pressure. So the main bearing clearance is critical and the rod bearing clearance is critical. Again, that's where the pressure is established, the base pressure, right there and in the oil pump. Pressure relief valve in the pump establishes the upper limit of the oil pressure. And again, high oil pressure is not always a good thing, but high volume of oil is more important. Okay. And if you're going to perform the test, again, you want the engine warm. You can't always rely on the, as it's known as idiot light, the light to come on. Remember, if the light comes on, it's actually too late. Right, it's already been damaged. It's normally the lights come on when it's 3 quarts low. So it's been riding around 3 quarts low for a while, and all of a sudden it jumps a little bit below 3 quarts. Now you got the light because you've got no pressure. Well, it's got no oil. No oil's passing past the pressure sensor, so that creates a problem. And you cannot always rely on the gauge on the dashboard. It's an electronic signal. It can vary and change. A lot of us know that from our gas gauges in our General Motors cars because they are all over the place.
One minute I got full tank, 1 minute I got
So you learn it, right? You learn it. It's like, okay, I'm all right. You don't have to worry about it. Okay, and then again, the oil itself, the oil lubricates. It also seals, and it cleans. Okay. That's why it's important to periodically change the oil. And you have to adjust your oil change intervals by your driving habits, where you drive at. Because what we see and what we think are actually 2 different things. We use a lot of filters, but we can't filter out everything. Dirt and dust still gets filtered through. Doesn't get filtered through. It goes down the intake manifold into that combustion chamber, burned up, and then it winds up in the oil. Remember, the combustion process alone is a dirty process. Okay, the heat itself helps make that a dirty process. What we're doing, we're actually taking carbon, we're igniting it, and we're burning it up. What's left over, or the residue, is still carbon. We scrape it off the cylinder walls, we pull it down into the oil pan. Okay. In the oil are what we refer to as dispersants. They need to hold those carbon particles and the dirt until we drain that oil out and put new oil in. Okay. They're trying to lull us into a sense of the oil is great. It will do this, this, and this. It can only do this so much. The minute you pour that new oil in that engine, first time you start it up, that oil starts to break down from that moment. So again, the right oil and the right oil change intervals are critical. Okay, engine removal. Again, every car is going to be different. All data is going to be your friend. Mitchell on Demand is going to be your friend. Look up the procedures. How does it come out? Which way? Top or bottom? The basic things, of course, disconnect the battery. Number one. Don't go in there trying to fight it and learn how to weld. Batteries makes a good welder. Oh, yes, you do. This is fun. You always got to experiment. Know your limitations.
Yeah.
Hook the jumper cables up to it. See what it do.
show us first, man.
Yeah.
I'll show you.
When you run, we run.
I ain't mad. I've been there. I know what it is. I told you, I used to, the old emergency brake cables on cars were all metal. And they'd come in, they'd be rusted. Take old battery, bring it over there, put jump cables on. One on this end, one on that end. Wait till it starts smoking. When it starts smoking, it's done. Unhook it. Unhook it. The cable worked fine. Now you spray some WD-40 on it.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, hell
I
yeah.
knew that. I had a bucket, I was a what? 93 Ford Escort?
No, they were done.
That was done?
Couldn't fix that.
Oh, yeah, that's why I jumped it.
Yeah, they were not the car, but the cables. They
Matter of
were-
fact, with the gear shift cable.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. Run that electricity through there, burns that rust right off of it.
But nothing wrong, that was the only thing that was wrong with that one.
All the guys, four-wheeler guys get out in the woods and break something.
Yeah.
Got to weld some metal together, hook the jumper cables to the secondary battery. Get a piece of coat hanger, go at it. It's not permanent now. It's a temporary.
Get some back to what's wrong.
It'll get you out the woods. It'll get you out the woods.
Be back at 8.
So again, if you can, clean the engine compartment down, because a lot of times they come in, they're massive oil leaks. Clean it down, pressure wash it, get it cleaned up. That way you can stay a little bit clean. Drain all your fluids. Again, once you get your information from all data, it's going to tell you which way you have to take it out. If you have to take the engine and trans out together, yeah, you want to drain the engine coolant, engine oil, and the transmission fluid. Because if you don't, you're going to have a horrible mess on the floor. And it's not fun.
It's not fun.
No, it's not fun. Done that dance quite a few times, and it's like, okay.
It also makes you want to let you run.
Well, I didn't get that wet.